Pivot table, conditional format, nested if statement. Beautiful.
Hey man, you still doing that manually?
It's not manual, it's a formula.
Right, well I just built a prompt that does your entire monthly reconciliation in 9 seconds.
Excuse me?
9 seconds. I fed it the GL data, told it to find the variances, and it spit out a summary with root causes. Take a look at this.
Where's it pulling the vendor pricing from?
It just knows.
It doesn't just know. That data lives in tab 34 of my master file, which feeds from an email chain that goes back to 2017.
Okay, Boomer.
I'm 42.
Look, the future is AI. Your spreadsheets are done. Leadership is already talking about rolling this out across finance.
Oh yeah? And what happens when it hallucinates a number and nobody catches it?
It doesn't hallucinate, it just interprets creatively.
Last week, accounting said your tool told them we had negative inventory.
Well, that was just a one-time thing.
Negative inventory. We're a manufacturing company. Where did the parts go? Did the AI lose them?
Okay, fair. But you want to know what the real problem is?
What?
They're about to roll out a new ERP module that's going to replace both of us.
Both?
Built-in automation, built-in analytics, no spreadsheets, no prompts, just the system.
How bad is the implementation timeline?
18 months minimum. Probably more like 3 years, though.
So they'll need workarounds, huh?
And they'll need someone to fill the gaps while it's half built.
I've got the data.
I've got the model.
Just one condition, though. We never use the word synergy.
Okay, deal.
So that is Spreadsheet Guy and AI Guy in an alliance there. And the reason I want to share that video is because one thing that people don't really talk about is how AI might be becoming the next shadow IT. That's just one of many things we're going to cover here in episode 284 of Transformation Ground Control.
Welcome to Transformation Ground Control. Ground Control. The podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation. Whether you're embarking on an ERP implementation, supply chain transformation, or any other business or digital transformation, this podcast is for you.
3, 2, 1.
Ground control to Major Tom.
Hello, welcome to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 284. My name is Eric Kimmerling, your host. I'm also the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent tech-agnostic consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. I've been in the digital transformation space now for 30 years, and I've seen these cycles come and go, and lots of trends come and go, and the latest trend, as we know, is AI. And one of the interesting things about that video I just played for you in the opening of this episode is I have a series called Spreadsheet Guy. It's a fun series I put out on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube Shorts. And it was meant to follow this character named Chaz, who's known as the Spreadsheet Guy because he's the guy that has all the tribal knowledge and the tools and the heroics and the spreadsheets and everything required to make sense of a very disparate and siloed enterprise tech landscape. And despite the fact that he's got crappy tools, he has a way to get it done. And the reason I like this video in this particular episode that I just played for you is because Chaz is oftentimes the symbol of a deeper problem, which is there's a lot of shadow IT in the form of spreadsheets and other technologies in organizations. But what I think is happening right now, and it's really interesting to watch it unfold in real time, is I think a lot of companies right now are unknowingly and unwillingly investing in the next round of shadow IT. You think about all these different companies out there that have no standard way of using AI. People are piloting AI in their own little micro processes. And a lot of companies out there are finding that they're spending an enormous amount of money without any control or visibility into how AI is being used. And there's no consistency to it either. There's no necessary business objective and not a necessary structured approach to how they roll out AI. And a lot of that is because it's such a new technology. A lot of it's because a lot of organizations haven't defined a future for how they're going to be using AI or how they could benefit from AI. So people do what they always do. They find a way to make it work. And that's exactly why spreadsheets have become so prolific within organizations. It's because people in their own human ingenuity found a way to make sense of broken systems, workarounds, data silos, email chains. Back in the day, it was fax machines and paper documents that people were trying to consolidate. And spreadsheets have persisted for decades now for that exact reason. And now we've got a new form of shadow IT called AI. And I'm not saying AI is going to be relegated to shadow IT. It will eventually become a very material part of technology and business strategy going forward. But for right now, it seems to be such a haphazard approach that organizations are falling into that trap of investing in a tool without any real direction, which leads to shadow IT, which is really hard to untangle. And it creates a bunch of technical debt. And as much as I hate that term, I see a lot of companies that are investing in the next round of technical debt, but they think they're actually eliminating technical debt because they're investing in something cool and sexy like AI. So I'm curious to hear from you if you're seeing that within your organization. Are you seeing this shadow IT emerging in the form of AI? Do you have a spreadsheet guy within your organization? Maybe you have an AI guy, a guy that's out there just throwing spaghetti at the wall with AI tools to see what works. I'd love to hear your feedback in terms of what you've seen within your organizations. So I'm excited for today's episode. We're going to have Emma Roloff on the show. She's going to be on to talk about change and how fear actually goes up the organization. Resistance to change and fear is oftentimes focused on the end users, the end employees, but actually it starts at the top. We're going to get into that later today. We're also going to have Natalia from Oracle on the show, and we're going to talk about agentic AI and where we are in this journey to agentic AI. I had a chance to meet with her just recently, and we're going to bring her on the show as well. And so before I get to our guest, though, a couple things I want to cover. First of all, and this ties into the spreadsheet guy video I just played for you, the AI mandate is starting to reverse. We saw a year or two ago a lot of companies that said, hey, you've got to be using AI. Companies had been pushing AI adoption hard, and many of them still are. They're pushing on AI leaderboards, token maxing, performance reviews tied to how much AI you use, measuring the use of AI, in many cases forcing organizations or team members to use AI. And employees were told to just embrace AI, go experiment. And now the bill has come due. The piper is coming to collect on the investments or the experimentations we've tried with AI. And that's the danger of technology and the danger of today's cloud and AI technologies is the more you consume, the more you use it, the more it gets embedded within your organization, the more expensive it gets and the harder it is to untangle. And now that organizations are starting to realize how expensive AI can be, because at one point it was pretty cheap to try out, and a lot of AI startups were just trying to get the tool out to as many people as possible. But now these AI companies have invested so much money in their infrastructure, the data centers, that they have to recoup their money. They have to raise prices. They have to start collecting the dues, if you will, from their customers that are using AI, especially the ones that are using it uncontrolled and without any guardrails. So for example, companies that are using a ton of generative AI and consuming there's a lot of consumption within these AI tools that ties up computing power. It costs the AI providers money, and they are passing that along to the customer. So they were, at one point, leaders were embracing AI. They were telling employees to go experiment, and now companies are starting to walk it back. And one example that's making the rounds recently in the news is a major consulting firm that repeatedly told its people to stop using AI models for certain routine tasks, like converting PDFs into PowerPoints, because the token consumption was so out of proportion to just having an associate do the work. So a lot of organizations now are finding that actually having a human do some of this work that they are starting to gravitate towards AI doing might actually be cheaper. And that's super interesting because that it totally defeats the whole promise of what AI was supposed to be, which was supposed to be something that eliminated jobs. And now I feel like there's a bit of a backlash, especially for organizations like in consulting where they make their revenue from humans. They're not making their money from agents or AI tools, at least not yet, or at least not at scale. So that could be part of it. There's a bias there in terms of wanting to preserve jobs and revenue streams and whatnot. But there's also a real thing here, a real trend, which is AI is starting to become more expensive than people in some cases, especially if you look at lower cost labor cost countries. I know we saw this in the early 2000s when a lot of companies were going through Y2K and their first round of client server ERP systems. A lot of international firms that I worked with in developing countries, especially back then when I was starting to do more international work, I found that a lot of companies in Asia Pacific, for example, especially in China, and China at the time was a very developing country. India was early in its development cycle. And I did a lot of business there, a lot of consulting in those two countries. And in the early 2000s, it was actually just cheaper for them to hire humans to do the work rather than putting in an ERP system or worrying about, capturing and collecting data. And it made it really hard to create that compelling case for change. And I think that's what we're starting to see here with AI, especially in these developing countries. But I think we're going to see it in the US and Western Europe and other developed more developed countries, I guess you could say. But either way, I think that's going to be the interesting thing we have to keep an eye on, is whether or not humans will be cheaper in the long term. Will AI actually save us money? Or is it going to be more of a play of AI is going to cost us more, but we're going to get more value out of it? I don't think companies have gotten to that point yet where they found the value, but we might be headed there. And, this isn't an AI failure. It's a leadership failure, because nobody stopped at the beginning to ask the key questions that have been failed to be asked by leaders for decades now. And that is, what problem are we actually trying to solve? And it's really easy with AI. It's so cool. Such a cool disruptive technology that it's really easy to look at that and say, I don't know what the problem is, but let's go all in and just try it. And that's what we're seeing a lot of organizations do. And I think that's going to be a challenge for organizations going forward. So that would be my takeaway here, is if you're implementing any sort of technology, including AI, but not limited to AI, you just have to ask yourself, what problem are we trying to solve? Because technology is getting pretty expensive. It's not getting any cheaper. It's going to cost more and more over time. Especially with these cloud subscriptions that entail fixed ongoing costs, that's going to get real expensive real fast. So you want to have a purpose. It's going to serve you well with your long-term costs, and certainly with your value you get out of your investments as well. So today I mentioned I'm going to be joined by Emma Roloff. I'm going to bring her on here in just a moment after the break. She's the founder of Roloff Consulting, and she's one of the sharpest voices in the market in change leadership. And she's here to challenge something that most of us get wrong. And as I mentioned earlier in the episode, we treat resistance to change as a frontline problem, as if it's the people on the shop floor and the back office who won't get on board. But Emma is going to make the argument that the resistance starts at the top. And she's got a case study that will help enforce this point or reinforce this point. And then we're going to get into why executives are just as afraid as everyone else, and how that fear rolls downhill and can potentially wreck projects. So we're going to bring her on here in just a moment. But real quickly before we do, I want to invite you to join us in Denver, September 9th through 11th, for our Digital Stratosphere Conference. It's a once a year event that we do in person. We also offer virtual passes. You can join online if you're international, or if you can't make it to Denver, you can join remotely or virtually. But it's going to be September 9th through 11th. There's going to be a lot of great speakers there, including Emma. Emma will be a speaker at Stratosphere. We'll have about a dozen other speakers, a lot of great peer networking, good workshops, good lessons learned, good chance to learn from other peers and network with other peers that are going through the same journey as you. It's going to be September 9th through 11th. There's 3 days of no spin, vendor neutral conversations on ERP, AI, and digital transformation. And AI, or Emma, I should say, is going to be here at the conference presenting more of her AI survey data that she captured, that she's going to reference and talk about a little bit here. She'll give us a sneak peek of it here in the conversation today, but she's going to dive into that in more detail in her keynote at Stratosphere. So go to stratosphere2026.com. And if you want a 20% discount, use the promo code EARLYBIRD20 for 20% off, and tickets are limited. So we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we will bring Emma onto the show, and we'll talk about change management and how it starts at the top, or resistance to change and how it starts at the top. We've got a lot to cover. Stick around. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control.
I'm Greg Benton. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer with Third Stage Consulting. And if you are embarking on your digital transformation journey, or in the middle of that journey in 2026, you're going to want to see our digital transformation report. This latest edition really dives into a lot of the key trends that we're seeing in the marketplace and the ecosystem right now. It also highlights a number of the things that are happening with AI being an important component and integral part of the ERP systems that are leading the way right now. Also, the shift toward composable and best-of-breed cloud solutions is really accelerating the decline of monolithic ERP replacement. The opportunity to download the report is found at thirdstage-consulting.com. And you'll also find other tools that will help you in the initiatives and the business planning that you're doing for 2026. Don't leave phase 0 without it. Reach out today.
I want to encourage you to read our Guide to Organizational Change Management. It's a free report or free guide that we publish. It's one that I actually wrote that talks about best practices and lessons learned as it relates to change management. So as you know, on this podcast, we cover a lot of stuff related to the human sides of change, organizational change management, including training, communications, org design, all kinds of stuff as it relates to change management. So if you're trying to learn more about change management, or you're looking for more direction and ideas on how to get started on your change management strategy and your overall journey, be sure to check out this guide. You can read it by scanning the QR code on the screen in front of you, or in the links below for this particular podcast episode. You can find a link to take you to the page that'll allow you to register to go ahead and download that and read it for free. So be sure to check it out. It's the Guide to Organizational Change Management, written by yours truly. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think, and hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. In cloud and digital transformations in 2026, leaders are trading short-term convenience for less flexibility and higher costs in the long term. This is a quote or a social media graphic I just posted on LinkedIn a few days ago, and really interested to hear what you think here, because one of the things that we talked about at the beginning of this episode, at the top of the episode, is we talked about spreadsheet guy and AI guy, and how there's, we're going to talk about resistance to change in this episode as well. But one thing that oftentimes gets overlooked at the top of an organization is how these decisions that are being made right now are actually limiting flexibility or creating less flexible foundations going forward, and how it's actually increasing costs in the long term. And the reason I share this graphic, the reason I think this is true, is because so many organizations don't realize how much flexibility they had with their on-prem systems, for better or for worse, and they don't realize how little they're going to have going forward in their cloud environments. And so they're giving up a certain amount of flexibility. And some of you may say, well, that's a good thing, right? Why should we be flexible? Why should we recreate the wheel when we could just deploy new ERP or cloud technology? And that may be true for part of your business, but there's going to be a good part of your business where that doesn't apply, or that's not going to work very well. The other thing is cost. I mean, these systems are just going to cost more. Cloud, AI, those are both ticking time bombs of sort that are going to just increase your fixed cost structure. Those costs are not going to decrease over time. They're going to escalate. That's the only direction they have to go, simply because once you've got that vendor lock and you've made these commitments to these vendors, your switching costs are so high. And when your switching costs are high, you're going to get charged more. It's just the way basic economics works. Now, the only way around that is if the government steps in and regulates it, or forces vendors to let customers out of contracts, or to force some sort of price concessions over time or whatever. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but that'd be the only way out of it. So just something to keep in mind as you're defining your digital strategies, and it ties in to this whole AI conversation we're going to have here in just a moment here with Emma. And I'm excited to have Emma on the show. She's been on this podcast several times before, and we're going to bring her on here to talk about how change resistance starts at the top. So Emma, thanks for being here today.
Hello, thank you for having me back again.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So tell us a little bit about yourself for those that don't know you, or maybe they haven't caught up with you recently. There's a lot. They may not know you, and you've also probably got some new stuff you want to talk about too.
Lots of moving parts. Yeah. So my name is Emma Roloff. I'm the co-founder of Roloff Consulting, and we focus in on the concept of digital leadership in the work that we do with our clients. And so the best way to describe that is the stuff that we're going to be talking about today: internal leadership, what it means to lead in a world full of technology inside your company, as well as how to take your mission and vision that you have for your company out to the market and build authority and trust through tools like social media and online content, as well as a little bit of sprinkle of like the professional development that's needed on the leadership side to be the kind of person that can show up and lead a change, try new things, experiment. And so we have a couple of different things that we have underway that are tied to that. My husband and I run our company together, which is why we creatively named it Roloff Consulting. And so James and I are currently in the final stages of working on a book covering this concept of digital leadership. We have an online community that we run that's focused, again, on both of those areas of internal and external leadership. And then we have hands-on consulting, both on the change side, as well as that how to build authority in the marketplace, and kind of more of the sales and marketing side of things as well.
Very cool. So what made you decide to write your book? What was it that inspired you to write it?
So James is more of a writer than I am by trait. This is kind of a second iteration for him of some of what he wrote about in his first book, which I think he no longer has published. It was like a self-published book early in his career that went through an Amazon editor, and he was like, ooh, let's take those concepts and repackage them. So that was part of it. But the other piece is this concept of how internal leadership and external authority relate is something that both James and I are really passionate about. And oftentimes we don't see people talking about leadership and how you're showing up in the company and how you're showing up online and in your industry and building that authority as concepts that are linked together. And in our mind, especially on the sales and marketing side, when you're going out and you're talking to the world about what you do and what problems you solve and how you help your customers, it starts with that internal leadership piece and how clear you are on your vision, how you're working with your team, how you navigate things internally. And what we found is in a lot of our work with clients, we were getting in to start talking about how are you putting that message out there? And then we'd find our way back at the beginning, kind of asking some of those foundational questions and offering clarity to our customers to like work through that process of who are you? Who are you helping? What problems are you solving? And how those things all flow together is something that we are really passionate about. And we don't necessarily see those topics being talked about side by side very often.
Yeah, that's exciting. So that's coming out this fall, right? I think that's what you said. Nice. Very cool. And
we don't have an official date yet because we're still working through the final edits of the book, but it will be this fall.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, cool. I'm looking forward to it. And I know you're going to be at our Stratosphere event coming up in September. You'll be one of the speakers there. So I'll make sure to pop up a QR code that you can register for that or learn more about. In fact, I'll pop it up right now just so you have it in front of you. It's on the top left side of your screen here. If you're watching, if you're watching the audio only version, you can also go to the show notes below and you'll see the link to register for or learn more about Stratosphere. But while people are checking that out, I'd also love to hear what city and country everyone's joining from here today. I know this is a global issue. This topic has relevance no matter where in the world you are. I know cultures are different, but the whole issue with change management, I don't know about you, Emma, but I haven't really come across certain parts of the world that are really good at change and certain parts that are worse than others. It seems like a universally challenging concept that really transcends geographies and cultures. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have yet to truly step into a company that hasn't had some sort of challenge when it comes to change. Now, even ones that do it very well still run into challenges from time to time because and I've said this many times, I think I've said it on stage at Stratosphere before in the past, technology implementations or market shifts or all of these other things, yes, can be difficult because of the technology or those components, but ultimately it all comes back to like the sticky part, which is human. And it's never going to look exactly the same, even if you're working with the same team through a change, depending on what other things are influencing their life, what other things are influencing the company at that time. The same team can respond to a change very differently, even if some of the dynamics are similar. And so I think that by nature, it's dynamic. And so it's hard to be like, oh, yep, this country's got it, or this industry's got it, because it's always evolving.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you, in the past, I think it was on this podcast, but not too long ago, you told me a story about a call you got from a customer who had to pull the plug on a credit memo project. You'd already spent months on it, lots of money, a bunch of teams that have approved the specs, and the business had estimated over $1 million in ROI. Then the executive sponsor changed, and the new one didn't want to deal with the people problems. Tell me about this case study, because this is a really interesting case study that was earlier in your career, but still very relevant to today.
Yeah, that was like probably the first moment where the whole concept of like people, process, and technology and people being first, like truly, like I had my aha moment. I guess is the best way to say it in this scenario. And I think part of the reason that this one really hit me on like how important the people side is because this customer specifically was really good at redesigning process and thinking through how they wanted to use the technology to enable a new type of process. And so they were kind of like my gold star client that did a really nice job of thinking through like how to stop that, like, because we've always done it this way mindset. And they were an existing customer that we had a strong track record with. As you mentioned, they had done their ROI calculations to be over $1 million because they were going to be deprecating multiple software platforms through the project. it had like all of the key components of like, as a salesperson being like, okay, good job. Like we found the right one. We're helping them. We're moving in the right direction. We had already gone through a discovery process with this customer, had brought in people from all of the 6 different departments that were going to be kind of like coming together on one process. And, but the challenge there was that this company had grown through acquisition. And so they had 6 different credit memo departments. And each one of them had their own software platform. Each one of them had their own process. They all had different thresholds for when they would like issue a credit memo and when they wouldn't. And there were some that were very lenient. And so the company had a lot of money being poured into these 6 different groups. And it wasn't a situation where anybody was going to no longer have a job. It wasn't a situation where like it was like a big consolidation that oftentimes can have a lot of fear around it. It was strictly just getting people to part ways with the tool that they were using and come to agreement on how they were going to use the new tool. So the first executive sponsor that we did had done a really nice job bringing everybody together, fully explaining that component of like, we're actually understaffed. So we need all of you. No one is in danger of losing their position, but we do need to consolidate some of these platforms. There are tools that we can't support anymore with like the team that we've got on the IT side. And this is a platform that we're using across the business. So we're going to move in this direction. We had over 25 people in the room for the discovery, which is, you know, not an easy conversation to facilitate. We had gotten everybody in agreement with how they were going to move forward with it, kind of like watched everyone duke out against them, their coworkers for their process and why they should be doing things the way they were going to. And we had gotten approval on everything. And it was strictly just like, I'm sure a couple of people who were really loud, and the new executive sponsor came in. They had already bought the software. They'd already paid for more than half of the services. And because of that pushback and having to have some difficult conversations or work with the team to understand where they had concerns or what was going on, this new executive sponsor within a week of taking over the project just cut it and cut the, 100,000 plus that had already been put into the project, plus all of the ROI that comes with the successful implementation of it. And I, as anybody that gets that phone call of we're pulling the plug, it's like, well, hold on, wait, like, can we go back? Was it like, we're no longer happy with what the process is? Like, do we need to go back and have like another couple of conversations, or what's going on? And that project manager who called me was like, probably more frank than she should have been in that moment, and kind of really threw that executive sponsor like under the bus in terms of like, no, Emma, there's nothing we can do. He said he didn't want to deal with the people problems. And she was like, and there's no convincing him around that. It's just done. And that was my moment where I was like, how do you get to the point of being a leader at this level in a company this size who can't handle a couple of difficult conversations to figure out how, as adults, we all move forward with a solution that feels doable for us. Yeah. And again, the process work had been done. The technology was there. It was a proven solution for them. It's not like any of those other components were getting in the way of it. And that's when I started to kind of like, in my reconciliation process, look back at other implementations that I had worked on, and which ones were successful and which ones did it feel like we were pulling teeth to try and get through the finish line, or who ended up having the type of adoption that gives a company the ROI that they need when they make these investments. And I started to see that like change leadership piece really emerge as like the common denominator across my customers who were finding the results that they were hoping for. And so from there, the way I talked about change, the way I sold software, the way I had process discussions with our customers, it all started to kind of shift. And I started to really push hard on that concept of like change leadership and thinking through the different conversations and that people side that we needed to be having in order to be successful.
Did you ever get a sense of why that executive sponsor didn't see a need for the change piece, or why they were so dismissive of it? Did you ever get a read on that?
I think it was, they took on a lot in the restructure, because it wasn't like a large organizational restructure. It was like one senior VP being removed and someone coming in and taking over.
Oh, okay.
And I think it was, I've got so much going on. There's so many dynamics in front of me. And this one, there's some people that are squawking about it. So let's push it aside and just be done with it.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, oh, let's think about like the impact this could have on the business and what a little bit of work on the front end could do to help us get through this. And I continued to work with that customer for a number of years after that, and they continued on with the status quo for a number of years. It's not like they all of a sudden brought in a different solution to replace it or something along those lines. They just kind of kept limping with all of those 6 different systems for quite some time.
I want to add real quickly to the story that Emma just told, because it's one of the clearest examples of leadership resistance I've ever heard. A company that grew through acquisition ends up with 6 separate credit memo departments, 6 different software platforms, 6 different processes, 6 different approval thresholds, and consolidating them was over $1 million in ROI, or it was worth over $1 million in ROI, mostly from retiring redundant software. Nobody was losing their job. In fact, the company was understaffed. This wasn't a layoff in disguise, but the original executive sponsor did it right. He brought 25 people together, explained the why, reassured everyone's jobs were safe, ran a real discovery process, and the specs were approved, and then the software was purchased, and most or half of the services were paid for. Then the sponsor gets replaced. The new executive walks in, heard a few loud voices, a few squeaky wheels pushing back, and he killed the entire project within a week. And his reason, according to the project manager, is because he didn't want to deal with people problems, as Emma just described. And they'd spent over $100,000, and all that money was just gone. $1 million more, or $1 million or more, plus in ROI, all gone. And the company limped along on those 6 disconnected systems for years after. And there's really 3 lessons or 3 takeaways here. One is that wasn't a technology failure. The process work was done. The software is proven. Every technical box was checked, but the only thing that killed it was a leader unwilling to have a handful of difficult conversations. The second lesson is that avoiding people problems doesn't make them go away. If it makes them, it really just makes them permanent. The executive thought he was clearing his plate, but what he actually did was lock in years of inefficiency and cost. And then the third lesson here is that a single leadership change can undo everything. If your project survival depends entirely on one sponsor's personal appetite for conflict, you don't have a governance structure. You've got a coin flip, and you're leaving success to chance, which is exactly where you don't want it. So when we talk about resistance to change, you've got to stop looking down at the front line and start to look up at the top of the organization. And this is why I enjoyed this conversation so much, is because usually, like I said at the top of the interview, we don't think about resistance to change we usually don't think about resistance to change as it relates to executives. Usually we're thinking about the front line employees. Maybe we're thinking about mid-level managers, but it's not very common, or it's not frequent that people will say, well, hold on, maybe the executives, maybe the leadership is the problem. And so I'd be curious to hear from you if you've experienced this or seen this within your organization. So we've got a lot more to cover. I'm going to keep going here with this conversation here in just a moment, but first we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
I met her in a club down in Old Soho, where you drink champagne and it tastes like Coca-Cola. C-O-L-A.
If you only attend one event this year, make it Digital Stratosphere 2026. It's our annual flagship conference. It's going to be September 9th through 11th in Denver, Colorado, the same location as we held it last year. It's 3 days where digital leaders, ERP practitioners, and transformation experts come together for no-spin, vendor-neutral conversations on ERP, AI, and digital transformation. There's no marketing fluff. There's no pay-to-play sponsorships, just real practitioners sharing real lessons. Go to thirdstage-consulting.com/stratosphere to learn more and register. Tickets are limited, and these always sell out, and I'd love to see you there.
The last thing you want to have happen is for your digital transformation to end up in court. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I have seen everything. My name is Marcus Harris. I'm a software and technology attorney, focusing my practice on drafting and negotiating software-related contracts and litigating software disputes across the country. Feel free to reach out to us at taftlaw.com. We'd love to talk to you about the litigation process and what you can expect.
Welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 284. My name is Eric Kimberling, your host here today. This is the tech agnostic podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation, including people, process, technology, and strategy. You can find new episodes every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. I want to share with you this social media graphic, and if you're listening to the podcast, or if you're listening to the audio only version of the podcast, I'll read it to you. But this is hosted here by Sam Gupta, who's an independent ERP analyst at Elevate IQ, and he's based out of Canada. And he put some good content here out on LinkedIn, and I follow him pretty closely. And he put this image that's funny but true, similar to the spreadsheet guy. And that's why I wanted to share it, because I shared with you a clip from Spreadsheet Guy at the top of this episode. And this graphic here is very relevant to not only that, but what we're talking about with Emma in our interview as well. And it says every ERP implementation starts with optimism and ends with someone rebuilding Excel. And it shows on day one, people are excited, and there's a little whiteboard that says one system, clean data, better processes, big wins. And then by month 12, you've got a tired looking guy. The same guy is all tired looking. He's got stacks of paper and spreadsheets everywhere. And then it says plan version 27, final, use this one, .xlx. So, I think this is a symptom of, and I think we're going to see more of this, by the way, more spreadsheets. I foresee a lot more spreadsheets in the future, not because I think spreadsheets are cool or because organizations need more spreadsheets, but because of that limited flexibility or that lack of flexibility that I mentioned at the top of the podcast or in the last segment. I was talking about how the fact that ERP systems are relatively inflexible creates a lot of pain, a lot of chaos, a lot of noise. And that is just going to open up the door for people to use more spreadsheets, more AI tools, more systems that aren't sanctioned by corporate IT. And in some cases, it's okay. But in many cases, you just end up with a mess or a spaghetti bowl diagram of systems. So again, that's from Sam Gupta. Be sure to follow him. He's technically a competitor of ours, but I view him as a peer, and he's someone you can follow on LinkedIn as well. So we're here talking with Emma Roloff, and we're talking about how resistance to change isn't just a frontline thing. It actually starts at the top. So I want to keep going here with the conversation for not wanting to deal with people issues, thinking that maybe you just don't have the time to have it on your plate. You've got too much on your plate. Well, you're just creating more problems. They're going to take a lot more time to clean up than if you just would deal with it up front. And that's it's such a ironic, if that's the right word, or ironic choice of path, but we see it a lot too. And it always fascinates me too. I never quite understand it, but I suppose if you've never been through a massive change like this, to see the collateral damage of not addressing people, then your instincts might be, how hard can it be?
Yeah. I think that's often what it is like, oh, well, that's the easy part. We just need to tell them we're doing it. They're like, oh, no, there's a little bit more than that.
or you see, like, I don't know if you've seen this too, but like in that example you gave, you got 25 people in the room. They might've been a little bit excited, like, oh, that's cool. Like, you can do all this cool stuff. And so it's easy to think change isn't gonna be hard for us. I get why other people might struggle with it, but we're going to be fine because they're excited about this new technology. And therefore, again, how hard can it be? It seems like it's almost like a falsified or a false sense of optimism or false sense of change acceptance when we haven't even gotten below the surface of what the change really entails. And that's where people start to freak out.
Yeah, I think, and to your point, there was excitement when the leader who was leading it was excited for it and was like, we're going to get through it together. We'll have the conversations that we need to. But again, I wasn't privy to like the week of transition. So I got the phone call like, hey, there's a new executive sponsor. This person is no longer with us. Here's the person that's over the top of it, and he doesn't want to deal with this anymore. I don't know if there was a sense of like unease and panic of a leader being let go that led to different feedback or different reactions to the change and uncertainty that was surrounding things as a whole. And again, even like that same executive sponsor was the executive sponsor for other projects that we worked with that customer on in different avenues. So it's hard to say without all of the information exactly what caused the people problems to erupt on that one. He also wasn't a stellar people leader in some of the other implementations either. But he at least didn't pull the plug on them.
Right. He didn't have the best track record to begin with. I'm going to ask you a follow-up question to that is highly likely to trigger you. So bear with me for 1 second. Well, I'll get to some audience questions first, though. It'll build on what we were just talking about. But Jennifer on YouTube says, hello. Thanks for being here, Jennifer. Marinda on LinkedIn says, perfectly quantified Emma. It all begins with internal leadership. And I think that's a great point. I actually posted today on LinkedIn just a poll, real simple poll, like it had like 4 or 5 options, like what are the main what's the main cause of failure? Because I always like to get like people's knee-jerk reaction. Like if you had to pick one reason why a project fails or struggles, what would it be? And there are a lot of people were commenting like it's really all the above, but it all stems back to leadership. And it was interesting to hear people say, which I kind of agree with, like if you don't have good leadership, you can't do all the other things that need to be done to make a project successful. We can talk about, governance and technical fit and all that stuff all you want. And that stuff is important, but a lot of times that's just a symptom of bad leadership that leads you down these paths of bad decisions that then cause other problems. But then you blame the wrong thing. You don't blame the leadership for the failure a lot of time. It's a hard pill to swallow for companies going through, because it's a lot easier to point fingers at the vendor, which I know you came from the side of the vendor at one point in your past life. It's easier to point fingers at your old self and say, well, you sold me this bill of goods that is impossible to implement, rather than taking accountability and say, well, I'm the one that made all these decisions about how to implement it. It's a good point there, Marinda. Got a couple hand claps here from John on YouTube. Thumbs up from Gerald on LinkedIn. Here's a question from Erica on LinkedIn. Erica says, I'm from Austin, Texas, currently at a conference in Albuquerque, interested to hear about the leadership development component. I'm curious to learn how to support leaders who were promoted for subject matter expertise with developing the strategic and change leadership skills. So that's really the key. And I know it cuts off here. It's a bit hard to read, but it's let me put it back up. But people, I think I've heard you talk about this on TikTok or somewhere. I've heard you talk about this a bit around, you get leaders that are, they're good at what they do. They might be good at sales. They might be good at finance, whatever they are. They're subject matter experts, and then therefore they get promoted. Now they're a leader, and they haven't necessarily had their skills keep up with doing the soft stuff beyond just your technical knowledge of your domain area. What words of wisdom do you have? What are your observations around that?
Well, Erica, if you're thinking about like helping support other leaders, the fact that you're even having like the cognitive process to be like, oh, maybe these people who are coming into this brand new role need development. That's step number one, because you're right, Eric. I've talked about this concept. I heard, and I can't remember where, I didn't come up with this, but I heard someone refer to it as accidental leaders and or accidental managers. And I think that concept rings true. I think there's a couple of things. So one is recognizing that not everybody who is a great individual contributor needs to be or wants to be a leader. And I think a lot of times what ends up happening is people feel pushed into leadership or management roles because it's the only way for them to advance in their career, because they can't keep getting raises or keep progressing if they're not willing to take on a team and manage a team. And I think that that's the wrong approach from the get-go. Now, if the person is actually passionate about working with other people and passing on knowledge and like is interested in the components of leadership and management that come with that next role, great. But I think part of it is like finding roles for people who maybe aren't interested in that, because that's not everybody's calling. I have many friends that have told me before, like, there would be no way, no how would I want to have a team below me. And that's just not what they are all for. They love being a developer, or they love being an individual sales rep. And so like it's recognizing that not everybody's meant for it. But then to the point where you've got the desire, I think that there's a lot of things that we undercut in terms of how much they can help us with like our soft skills. So, I talk about like soft skills development in one of the keynotes that I give regularly. And one of my older brothers came and he was like, you forgot one of the most important pieces. And he used to be an English teacher, and he was like reading literature and like forcing yourself to be in a different point of view and thinking about other people's emotions and other people's thought processes through things. I think I do this sometimes with like parenting, is like stopping and forcing yourself to then take on that other perspective and try to think through, if you were in that other person's shoes, how would you work through that? And I think as like working with somebody who is a developing manager, to have some of those conversations and kind of forcing them to think through these other perspectives, or talking them through your perspective for maybe why you're saying no to something or why you're making a decision that you're making. Those types of things build soft skills a lot. I think giving them opportunities to, one of the most helpful things for me when I was like learning sales and then also just like developing in my own internal leadership is like having the opportunity to take a stab at running a leadership meeting or a conversation with a customer in my situation with sales, where you run through it and then afterward you get feedback. Like these things that like a lot of times, and not like feedback 6 months later in a performance review, but like sitting down and actually coaching someone of like, hey, when you said this, did you notice the look that this person had on their face across the room? I know you were in it, but that's something next time I want you to try and pick up on, because that's a signal to you that maybe they were uncomfortable with what you put forward. Or did you see their body language in this scenario? That's something I want you to look for, because that means that they were like receptive to what you were talking about. And if you as like a leader have strong soft skills, like actually putting effort forth to coach other people on that and have those conversations so that they can like start to think through those dynamics themselves. Because if you're unaware of them, they just exist out there and you don't realize that they're things that you need to be paying attention to. And a lot of times I think we think through soft skills as something that you either have or you don't. Like you either pick up on body language innately or you don't. And it's like, well, no, that is something that you can learn. You either have charisma or you don't. No, there's small things that you can do that you can learn that make you more approachable from other people's perspective. And actually just spending the time to focus on those things, I think makes a really big difference. And my personal opinion on this is a leader taking that like coaching step and that mentoring step means a lot more than like, here's a subscription to LinkedIn Learning, go watch a course about soft skills, and like having it be applied to real life scenarios that you're going through and working through makes it a lot more meaningful for people that are trying to learn those skills, because they're interpersonal. Handing it off to like an e-learning module isn't the same as like having that anchor to a real life scenario.
Now, Emma just named something that explains a huge percentage of failed transformations, and she called them accidental leaders. I really like this term. Once you hear it, you're going to start to see them everywhere. I think you'll start to recognize these accidental leaders when you run into them. And perhaps you have some examples of accidental leaders within your organization. But here's how it happens. Someone is excellent at their craft. They're good at sales or engineering or accounting or product development, whatever it is. And the only way we let them advance and the only way they get more money or a bigger title is to put a team under them and move them up the organization. So we as leaders promote them into leadership, whether or not they ever wanted it and whether or not they are equipped for it. And now we've done two damaging things at once. We've taken away a great individual contributor, and we've created a leader with zero preparation for the hardest part of the job, which is the people. And that's a big part of what we're talking about here today. And this is really, honestly, a big part of the root cause of why leaders sometimes are just ill-equipped or unequipped to handle big transformation initiatives, whether it's AI or ERP, digital transformation, or whatever it is. And so what do you do about it? Well, there's three things you can do in this accidental leadership scenario. One is you can stop making management the only path up. Not everyone wants to lead. I mean, some people like the leader that Emma talked about in the previous segment. And earlier in the interview, she's talking about the person that doesn't like, or the executive sponsor that didn't want to deal with people problems, so they canceled the entire project. That, who knows, maybe that could have been the right thing to do, but chances are high that there was a heavy bias there because the person just didn't want to deal with the people side of it. And that's understandable in some ways, because if you're an individual contributor and you're really good technically or functionally or whatever your domain expertise is, but you're not a good leader, you don't like it, then that's the kind of behavior you're going to see. So a way around that is to build advancement tracks for people who want to go deeper in the craft rather than wider across a team. And that forces a great developer into management to give them, or that begs the question of how forcing a great developer into management to give them a raise is a bad trade for everyone. The second thing you can do about it is to treat soft skills as learnable, because they are. And this is something Emma really honed in on here. And she was saying that, we tend to think you either read body language or you don't. You either have charisma or you don't. And that's wrong. These are trainable skills. Emma talked about her brother, who's an English teacher, and how he made a point, which is that reading literature builds the muscle because it forces you into someone else's perspective. And I can attest to this too. I never really thought of myself as a salesperson, never thought of myself as a charismatic person or a leader or someone that people would follow. It took me a while to build the confidence and to sort of build those muscles and then start to use and flex those muscles. And I'm still learning. You know, I'm always learning about how to be more charismatic, how to be a better speaker, how to engage people more, how to get people more excited. It is something that for me has been hard, but it is something that I've been able to learn. And I certainly wasn't this way early in my life, and I've got a long way to go too. So I totally agree with Emma there. And then the third thing you can do is to coach in real time, not in the annual review. And this is a really big one that gets overlooked a lot. So you don't want to hand someone a LinkedIn learning subscription and call it development. You want them to run the meeting. You want them to debrief immediately and, you know, give the coaching right there on the spot, similar to what an athlete would do or what a coach of an athlete would do. You don't see them necessarily waiting until after the game or a few days after the game to give the coaching. You see them on the sideline during a timeout or during a break or on the bench. You'll see the coach coaching the players, telling them what they can do to improve right there on the spot while it's fresh in their minds, while the mistake or whatever they could have done better is still fresh in their minds. And so that kind of anchored in the moment coaching is more than any course because it's attached to a real scenario that they just live. So if you're promoting people for expertise and then wondering why your projects stall on the people side, this is why. And so you want to fix the development side of things, not just the org chart. Have you ever worked on a project with a leader like this, or have you ever worked for a leader like this? And when we say like this, it could be what Emma just described, the accidental leader that is a subject matter expert, but not necessarily a good leader, and or someone who didn't really believe in the people side of change. I'd love to hear just the comments from the audience here. Have you seen this before? Does it sound familiar? Do you work for one? You don't have to mention them by name unless you want to. Well, we'll keep it anonymous. We won't tell anyone, we promise. But I want to ask you about this, Emma, partially because I know I have a feeling it's going to trigger you just because I've seen you talk enough about it on Instagram. But let's talk about AI, leadership and AI, and the shiny silver object. You know, AI, surely everything you just said, and I'll just go ahead and just dive in and trigger you and tell you what I know you don't want to hear. But surely everything you just said is different now because AI is going to change everything. So therefore, the people part of what you just said isn't as important. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's bullshit, Eric.
I think that's exactly what every video you put out there on TikTok.
Yeah, and this is the part, like, I do understand that AI has more advanced capabilities than other tools and technology that maybe we have been working with in the past. But in my mind, and I think in the mind of many other people, the goal of technology should be to enable people and enable processes that are helping people. And I think when we talk about shiny object hunting, and specifically like how much that seems to have like spread across the world in an instant when AI became available, we are so fixated on technology for technology's sake that we have lost the plot of what we're trying to accomplish. And when you say things like, oh, well, it's, you know, AI is so easy to use, anyone can prompt it, like, we don't need to think about training. Well, I did a survey and most people said that they feel incredibly underprepared to utilize AI because their company isn't training them at all. And there is like only 20% of respondents in my AI survey, which I'll be presenting a little bit more at Stratosphere about, said that there is any sort of formal AI training happening in their company. So, and then we look at things like token maxing and AI leaderboards and all of these other things that were designed just to have people experiment. Well, none of them led to the types of outcomes that companies were hoping for. And now we're seeing all of that stuff be stripped away and companies coming back and saying, actually, please don't use AI for that. Please don't use AI unless it's helping advance X, Y, and Z. And it's like, now the companies are begging the people that they asked to go out and experiment to stop experimenting without a why. And it's like, well, that's kind of your job. That was your role within this whole thing, was to have a real reason for why we're going to use the technology on the front end. And you didn't give people that. So they went out and they figured out how to experiment or how to use it because you were just looking at the outcome of using the technology because we lost the plot. And the plot needs to be that why. And if you want to get outcomes from technology, it has to go back to that why. And it has to go back to solving a real problem that your people can attach to in some capacity. And that doesn't go away just because the tool is cool.
Yeah,
And obviously, I could keep going for quite some time, but I'll stop for a minute.
So I want to stop for a second here and give a quick myth bust. Emma covered this one about as bluntly as anyone can. And she said the myth, or she highlighted this myth, AI is so powerful and so easy to use that the people matters less now. The people side matters less now. And that's exactly backwards. Here's the data. In Emma's AI survey, only 20% of respondents said their company had any formal AI training at all. So only 20% of respondents said their company had any formal AI training at all. Meanwhile, most people reported feeling deeply underprepared to actually use these tools. So we've handed people the most capable technology of our lifetime with essentially no instruction because someone decided that anyone can just prompt it. And then we look at what companies actually did instead of training. They set up AI leaderboards, token maxing, performance reviews tied to AI usage, all designed to force experimentation without ever answering why and what is it we want to accomplish. And then what happens? Well, none of it produced the outcomes that leadership expected. So now these same companies are stripping it away and telling employees, actually, please stop using AI for that. So they're doing a total 180 here. And you have to think about how absurd that loop is. You told your people to go experiment without a purpose, and now you're frustrated that they experimented without a purpose. And now your costs are higher, and there was no purpose, there's no ROI, there's no tangible business value. And that was your job. That defining the why was your job if you're a leader, but it didn't happen. So here's the truth. The goal of technology has always been to enable people and enable the processes that serve the people. When we get fixated on technology for technology's sake, we lose the plot. And AI doesn't change that. If anything, AI raises the stakes because now you can waste money faster and at greater scale than ever before. So the tool being cool has never been a strategy. The tool being something that's disruptive and groundbreaking and something with so much potential, that's not a good strategy. And it's probably not true. It's probably not necessarily untrue, but the most powerful technologies without direction and purpose is going to be an expensive money pit that's going to just create more disruption than value. So that's something to keep in mind. And that's why the myth that we've got to bust here is that AI doesn't make the people stuff any less important. So we've got a lot more to cover here with Emma. We are going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control. If you're about to embark on the jungle of digital transformation, check out my new book, Welcome to the Jungle. It's a book that just came out in late 2025. It's my second book, and it's a book that focuses on digital transformation failure case studies and talks about the lessons and takeaways from that. It's 300 pages packed of all the lessons and things that I've learned from having been an expert witness in lawsuits related to digital transformations and also with our team helping clients recover some of their failed projects. I've included as many lessons as I could possibly fit into one book here. You can read this book. You can order it anywhere in the world in hard copy format, which is this format here. You can get it in paperback. You can also get it electronically as well. Scan the QR code right here or go to the links below for your copy. Hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think.
Are you looking for ways to promote your product or service to enterprise technology decision makers and influencers throughout the world, like the ones who listen to this podcast? Major Tom Productions creates media, events, and influencer marketing for B2B technology providers. Our productions are exciting, educational, disruptive, and effective. Most importantly, they create results. Our content is unlike any other in this industry, engaging, influential, and trusted by technology buyers and influencers throughout the world. Each month, our productions reach hundreds of thousands of targeted buyers and decision makers who trust and engage with our honest and tech-agnostic content. With long-tail viral results and engagement with our content, Major Tom Productions provides a way to reach your target market and create awareness, calls to action, and a connection with potential customers. So collaborate with us today. Learn how we can feature your product or service on podcasts such as Transformation Ground Control, Journey to S/4HANA, and Journey to Dynamics 365. We can also feature your brand on our YouTube channel called Digital Transformation with Eric Kimberling, which boasts over 100,000 subscribers and over 2 million video views per year. You can also participate in our in-person events, including our Digital Stratosphere Conference. Contact us today to learn more. We can tailor a marketing campaign that works for you. We look forward to helping more people learn more about and become engaged with your brand.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 284. My name is Eric Kimberling. You can find new episodes of the show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. And if you like this content we're covering here today, every week we cover tech agnostic topics related to digital transformation, including strategy, people, process, technology. It's the no spin zone of digital transformation. So thanks for being here today. I think I've heard you talk about how, people, it shouldn't be a surprise that people are afraid or aren't super excited about AI when all the media and leaders are talking about how efficient it's going to make everything, how it can reduce jobs. And you also read all the sensationalist headlines about, 100 million jobs lost worldwide due to AI in the next 5 years or whatever. And you wonder why do you think people are afraid of AI? Why aren't they on board with it? Well, maybe it's because they're worried about losing their jobs, and they're worried that you're just going to take all their knowledge and now, put it in an AI model. Now you don't need them. But where I was going with that is I wonder, I thought of this when I first saw the Ford example, where Ford had to hire back a bunch of quality engineers because they tried to roll out this quality AI tool. It failed miserably. They had laid off like 350 engineers, put in an AI tool. The AI tool screwed everything up, and they had to hire back the engineers. But as you're talking about the tokenization and the consumption-based pricing and all that stuff, I wonder if it's going to get to the point in the not too distant future where it's like, actually, it's cheaper just to have a bunch of humans doing the stuff manually. I almost feel like it might send us backwards, backwards.
I think it's hitting that point at this point because so many companies went so far into that promise of we're going to be at the efficiency gains without actually thinking through, that's not to say that we couldn't reach a point 20 years from now where all of a sudden we're operating in this completely autonomous era where humans just get to sit on the beach all day. I'm using that idea. We get to sit on the beach all day and do whatever we want because the computers are doing everything around us. And if you listen to Elon Musk, he'll tell you that money won't matter by 2030 because the world is just going to run on these robots and you just get to do whatever you want and money is no longer an object. But
I have trouble seeing that vision, by the way.
I do too. There's many questions that I had when I heard that interview clip. But to your point, there is massive fear surrounding it. So there's the components of people not wanting to support it because they're afraid of it. But then the companies got so enamored with this promise of ultimate savings with minimal amount of work. I the part that I'm still grappling with is I knew FOMO was a powerful tool. I'm a career salesperson. I would be lying if I said I didn't know that fear was a motivator for people, right?
Right.
I knew it was a powerful motivator, but never did I believe that it would be able to sway markets and create the monster that it's created over the last couple of years. And these companies just thinking that every piece of wisdom of how we use technology, how businesses work, and the way that everything has always been done all of a sudden goes out the window because there's a model that can predict the best next word that should come when you ask it a question.
Right. Yeah.
And honestly, while we were talking about this, I got so fixated by the thought that we bought into the FOMO piece. I'm not sure if I actually answered your question.
well, actually, and I went down a rabbit hole in my head too, thinking I remember you talking about FOMO well before the whole AI thing started. And to your point, you're starting to see it. You're starting to see it pan out now. But I think where you're going with that is FOMO is leading executives, leaders. The whole industry is going down this path of going all in on AI. And we were talking about how the backlash. What is the backlash against? Maybe people realizing that shiny object is not so shiny. Maybe the humans are better. Or maybe
that's right. And whether we're going to see, I think to your point, you brought up Ford. There are a number of other reports that I have seen coming from companies like Accenture Now, again, I'm not in Accenture, so this is just like hearsay from the headlines, but companies like Accenture have started telling people, like, actually, please stop using the AI model for these things. We want you to go back to using like associates for this work. Like, please, like, go back to the people, because we cannot afford to keep doing these things that just churn on tokens. The example that I saw in an article recently was that, like, they had tied performance to AI usage at a partner level. And one of the things that partners were doing was asking their AI model to take large PDF documents and turn them into into PowerPoints for them. And the amount of token consumption for that activity was like completely out of whack for what they should have just been asking associates to build their PowerPoints like they've done for decades. And so, like, that was the example that they were using in this article, that they've come out and said, please stop using AI to convert PDFs into different file types. Like, if you need that, like, do it in an alternative manner, or use like associates that we have on staff. And I think like consulting firms with like these younger, like brand new, you were one once upon a time too, but these brand new like college grads that are working, and they're definitely getting paid a lot less than it would cost for like AI to do certain tasks. And so I think we are starting to see some of that happen. And I think the pendulum always swings, right?
Yeah.
And that, like, where we are 5 years from now will probably be somewhere in the middle, and we'll get better at identifying where and when we should be using this technology, as opposed to let's use AI for everything all the way just for AI's sake. And I think we were up on one side, definitely, when we saw leaderboards and, again, the performance reviews tied to whether or not you were using AI and how much you were using it, to now maybe the swing back to like, we didn't get the ROI. The CFO says no more. We're cut off. Like, we're not doing it anymore. To then, okay, now we have established use cases. There are people that have figured out where it makes the most sense. And then maybe it'll swing back until it finally kind of centers out. We figure out where it's the right tool. And then something new will come in and shiny and sit on top of it that we all get distracted about. And that pendulum will fall somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. Well, what's crazy is how much money AI providers are investing right now, like in data centers and just in building out this infrastructure. Like Oracle spending, I think, $600 billion in the next few years, including in your neck of the woods in Wisconsin. They're building a big AI data center. But you look at the mass amounts of money that these companies are spending, and you understand why they have to recoup their costs somehow. But at the same time, there's this mad rush right now to go build all these data centers. It's driving up supplier costs, like the raw materials costs, because a lot of our clients actually provide raw materials to data centers, like the manufacturing side of things. So they're booming right now, but there's bottlenecks there and shortages and whatnot. So prices are just going to keep going up. They're going to try and pass that on to customers. A lot of these AI providers aren't going to succeed. A lot of them will fail, just because that's how these booms and busts always go. Mm-hmm. And the survivors will be left, and they're going to be holding a big amount of debt and capital spending on their balance sheet that they're going to have to recoup somehow. So I just don't see a world where this gets really cheap for all of us, or a lot cheaper, I should say. I think this is as cheap as it's going to be.
And it would, I mean, eventually it will, right? Like, if you look at Moore's law and how all of those things are still in place, and AI will eventually get cheaper if the infrastructure build out continues.
Yeah.
But there's also other components to this, that it's not just like straight, all of a sudden someday we have unlimited power and none of the consequences. There's like the resourcing components. There is the sheer amount of data, like at this point that, it's already, most of these models, at least the frontier models, are trained on almost everything that's on the internet. So then we'll start to see things like, all of a sudden, like, how do we continue to improve these models if they don't have additional data to be trained on? And then there's, of course, the theories of like what happens with the dead internet, which we've apparently crossed over into more bots and AI generated content than humans now. So how do we continue to train on the internet when there's more bots on the internet than there are humans? And how do you train these models to continue to get better when half of the stuff on the internet is AI generated? And so then we start to look at other problems beyond just the cost of compute, I think, that limit some of this. And that's why we start to see things like wearable devices being pushed at the level that they are, and other ways to collect data and do things to try and get these models to continue to progress. But we saw the boom and the acceleration that we did because it had the training data that was available. And now it's at a point where like there's more than just like compute costs that come into how expensive this is and what it looks like moving forward.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Gerard on LinkedIn says great description. Jacqueline on LinkedIn says, when we don't understand AI's true capabilities over time, as it's in the early stages, how can companies provide true due diligence and responsibility training in the meantime? That's a good question. Like, how do you get people using AI the proper way, or in a way that makes sense and is best for the company?
To me, it comes back to, again, this like idea of like, what problem are you trying to solve? And I know, Eric, you've seen me talk about this before, but I've had people like talk to me about, hey, what AI solutions should we be looking at? And being like, I don't know, what problem are you trying to solve? And then coming back with like, well, we got a directive from the board. And I've talked about that like conversation that I had with an executive on LinkedIn in presentations and social clips and stuff like that. And the amount of like people that I've had come back that have said like, yeah, like my executive team can't answer what problem we're trying to solve. They can't tell us why we're doing it. And it's because everybody has, and it all links back to what we were saying, there's this message that if you don't adopt, you will be left behind. And AI is this all-powerful, all-knowing tool, and your competitors are going to replace all of their people with it. And if you don't do it and you don't act soon, you're going to be the only one with these ineffective humans around that like, whew, no way are you going to be in business anymore. And then like they can't justify that they're doing it just strictly to be able to replace their employees, because who would want to support that? So then they just say something along the lines of like, well, we can't think that way, or we'll be left behind, but they don't have a real reason that they're doing it other than being told that they're going to be left behind. And so like when it comes to, maybe the answer isn't just using AI for everything. Maybe the answer is going and looking at use case specific tools that are available. Or even if you don't want to use a point solution, which I'm not going to ever fault someone for saying like, we don't want a collection of 1,000 point solutions around the company. Maybe you're looking at specific point solutions and then going back to your team and talking about like, is this a problem that we have? And is this a problem that we could solve with AI? Or scrapping looking at solutions first and going and talking to your people. What are the things that we have trouble with? What are the things that we could do that would improve the customer experience? What are the things that you're spending tons of time on that if you weren't doing, you could pay more attention to the customers, or you could finally catch up on your workload? And then once you have those conversations, use cases start to emerge and you start to think through, okay, this is the problem that we need to solve right now. This is the benefit we're going to get from it. Is AI the right tool for it? Maybe there's another technology out there that's more inexpensive and you'll get the return anyhow. But like going through that process of starting there. So I think rather than like, how do we use it just for the sake of using it, where do we have problems and how do we solve those problems is the way that we need to be thinking through that question.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. And one thing that I've heard you say too is that you've said in the past that the fear of losing your job doesn't stop at the front line. It goes all the way up. And we talked about, the executive, we started off the discussion talking about the executive that didn't believe in and didn't want to support and did not support the people side of a big financial transformation. But in general, something you talk about, which is interesting, is the concept of afraid executives. You talk about accidental executives or accidental leaders, but what about afraid executives? What does that look like? And what do you mean by that when you talk about the afraid executive? Is that the FOMO thing or is it something different?
I think it's tied to FOMO. And like going back to the concept of fear, everybody has fears. And that doesn't stop. And that's a human nature, right? We're always going to have what if scenarios in our mind. There's always going to be things that are playing in the back of your head. When you are an executive, you're still a human. Those things don't go away. Who you answer to changes, right? Like you are no longer necessarily beholden to 3 layers of bosses above you. but maybe it's one layer of a board that can cut you and take your livelihood out from underneath you. And so there's still fear associated with that. And more often than not, I feel like FOMO definitely is like a part of that equation. But FOMO also, like that message of like, you need to act now or you'll be left behind. Now is the time. That message trickles down to everybody. Everybody hears it. Everybody's afraid of it. So that means at the top level, the board is hearing that and they're looking to their executive team and they're saying, what are you doing to respond to this?
Yeah.
And there's a fear that if you push back to that message from the board and say, well, hold on, let's stop for a minute. What problems are we trying to solve? Or why would we do this instead of why would we break from the strategy that we've got to jump onto this bandwagon? There's fear of, oh man, what if that's right? What if I don't act and we do get left behind? Then I'm out of a job. And then there's like the next wave of fear that comes with, oh gosh, I'm the person that needs to decide what solution we're using. Oh gosh, I'm the one that decides where this goes. Well, let's just do what everybody else is doing so that at least if it fails, I can point over there and say everyone else was doing it. And then I've got something, or we've talked about this before, Eric, like, oh gosh, it's my job to make this decision. Why don't I bring in a management consulting firm so that if it goes wrong, I can point the finger at them? And all of these decisions are typically rooted in some type of fear. And the fear doesn't go away just because you have a big paycheck and a fancy title. Yeah. Those things are still there. And so they impact the decisions and the things that are being made. And then I accidentally one time on a live said this wrong, but it kind of stuck. And I said, like, leadership rolls downhill. And I meant to say leadership. But like those decisions that are motivated by fear roll downhill and impact the employees that are then ultimately the ones that are left with like a half-baked solution or a consulting firm that's just focused on getting more hours against their billable rate. And then you've got, or a solution that didn't actually meet the need because the needs analysis never actually got up to the people that were making the decision on the platform. And all of those fear-motivated things that happen at the top impact the way that change is adopted at the bottom. And it can all be reversed by just stopping and asking the question why at the beginning.
Yeah. Here's an alternate view that goes against or runs counter to traditional change management thinking. And that is that your executives are just as afraid as your frontline employees. They're just afraid of different things. So it's not that they're any more or less afraid. It's just that they're afraid of different things. And so it's easy to think that the leaders are not afraid. It's really the frontline employees. Well, everyone's a little afraid, and just for different reasons. But we build these entire change programs around managing frontline fear. Things like, will I lose my job? Will I be able to learn this? Will my role still matter? And these are all legitimate fears, and we address them. But we act like fear stops at a certain pay grade, but it doesn't. You became an executive, but you didn't become inhuman. You're still a human. What changes is who you answer to. Instead of three layers of management above you, it's a board that can end your career in a single meeting. And as Emma laid out exactly how that fear cascades, the board hears adopt AI now or get left behind, and they ask the executive team what they're doing about it. That's step one. Then the executive is afraid to push back because what if they're right? What if we don't act and we do fall behind? Then I'm out of a job. So then the executive acts without a why. And then the next fear kicks in. What if I picked the wrong solution? Well, let's just do what everyone else is doing. So if it fails, I can point to the industry. Or better yet, let's bring in a big consulting firm. So if it fails, I can point at them. Every one of those decisions is rooted in fear, not strategy. And this is a fear-based decision-making process that has been inherent in leadership, especially as it relates to digital and technology projects for decades now. It's the same pattern repeating itself. We've seen it in history. It's happening again today. And every one of these decisions is rooted in fear, not strategy, and they roll downhill. The employees at the bottom end up with a half-baked solution, the consulting firm optimizing for billable hours in a system that never actually addresses their needs because the needs analysis never made it up to the person making the decision. So Emma's data that she talked about really does back this up. In her survey, both executives and individual contributors reported the same intensity of pressure to adopt AI, 4 or 5 out of 5. It's just same pressure, but a different form. So if you're building a change strategy, you don't want to just manage down. You have to ask what your leadership is afraid of, because unaddressed executive fear does more damage to transformation than any amount of frontline resistance. So We're going to keep going with this conversation here with Emma, but first we're going to take a quick break, and we're also going to bring on Natalia from Oracle. She's going to be on to talk about agentic AI and some of the direction that she sees the industry going, and she's going to talk about it from a vendor perspective, from Oracle's perspective, how they're investing in agentic AI. We've got a lot more to cover. We've got Emma and Natalia. They have a lot to share, so be sure to stick around. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control.
I'm Greg Benton. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer with Third Stage Consulting. And if you are embarking on your digital transformation journey or in the middle of that journey in 2026, you're going to want to see our digital transformation report. This latest edition really dives into a lot of the key trends that we're seeing in the marketplace and the ecosystem right now. It also highlights a number of the things that are happening with AI being an important component and integral part of the ERP systems that are leading the way right now. Also, the shift toward composable and best-of-breed cloud solutions is really accelerating the decline of monolithic ERP replacement. The opportunity to download the report is found at thirdstage-consulting.com. And you'll also find other tools that will help you in the initiatives and the business planning that you're doing for 2026. Don't leave phase 0 without it. Reach out today.
The last thing you want to have happen is for your digital transformation to end up in court. I've been doing this for 20 years and I have seen everything. My name is Marcus Harris. I'm a software and technology attorney focusing my practice on drafting and negotiating software-related contracts and litigating software disputes across the country. Feel free to reach out to us at taflaw.com. We'd love to talk to you about the litigation process and what you can expect.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 284. This is the tech agnostic podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm your host. I'm also the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. I've been in this industry for 30 years. And as I have conversations like this, like we're having with Emma right now, I start to feel like a feeling of Groundhog Day, just repeating itself. Same pattern, same mistakes, different technology, different players, but the same patterns and mistakes that we've been seeing here for 30 years or so. And we're going to keep going here with the conversation with Emma. In the Big Four, early in my career, that was a very common statement. Not the leadership rolls downhill, but just shit rolls downhill. But they would say in the context, if you're at the bottom of the rung, you're at the bottom of the organization, so the shit's rolling down to you. So a little bit different meaning, but it's still very true. And it's interesting too how you mentioned that people, even at the top, the higher paid people, the shine, the big paychecks and cars and all that stuff, they still answer to people. And it is amazing how many boards are just saying, we don't care what you do, how you do it. We just need AI. We need more of it. It's kind of like that Saturday Night Live skit where they just say more cowbell. It's like more cowbell. And they keep playing. And Will Ferrell's like one of the guys playing the cowbell. And
and to this question, the thing that I think is really interesting when I did my AI survey, I called it the AI vibe check survey. So it was me asking people, and I asked them to identify, like, are you a leadership or leader in a leadership role or an executive, or are you like an individual contributor? And that was the one question that I asked was, how much pressure are you feeling to adopt AI on a scale of 1 to 5? And that was the one answer across the board from both groups. The majority of both executives and individual contributors identified that they were feeling either a 4 or a 5 out of 5 in terms of pressure to adopt AI. And it was both at the leadership level and the individual contributor side. So the pressure takes different forms, but it's being felt across the board at the same level, no matter what role people are in.
Yeah. I'd love to hear from the audience too. Are you all feeling the same pressure too? Are you feeling FOMO either at your level, up above you, below you, whatever? I'd love to hear your feedback on that, comments or things for that question. This is interesting too. You talked about bringing in outside consultants to potentially point the finger at or to use potentially as a scapegoat in these projects. Here's a different angle that I really like. This is from Joshua on LinkedIn. He says, it's also true that vendors do push the AI conversation with executives. So there's an element of FOMO, but there's also vendor interest pushing this. So I guess the question here would be, how much of it, you mentioned the board's putting pressure on leaders who are then putting pressure on the rest of the organization to start using AI or insert cool new technology here. This isn't just an AI conversation, obviously, but how much of it is external, do you think? Like how much of it is coming from the big consultancies, the big analysts, and the people that are pushing their own agendas, and therefore it's translating into the board saying, yeah, we need that. We've got FOMO, and now we're going to force everyone else into this same FOMO cycle. What are your thoughts there?
I mean, the technology industry, whether it's the tech companies, analyst firms, the consulting companies, they all are fueled by perpetuating the FOMO message. It's kind of like the fashion industry. Like the messaging to young girls that if you're not wearing what's fashionable, like, oh gosh, you're not going to have any friends, right. It's the same like marketing tactics and tools that these companies know exist. And I mean, all you have to do is look at the talk track of Sam Altman and Daria Amodei, and we mentioned Elon Musk earlier. His is a little less fear-based sometimes, but there is this like massive message out there of like, if you don't act now, like you're going to be behind. And even at the level of like, if America doesn't make these ethically gray decisions immediately and not regulate this, we're going to be behind. And so it's even happening at like the
the government
world level in terms of how we talk about this technology, that if we stop doing these things that you guys all say you're really uncomfortable with, someone else is going to do it. So we might as well do it too, because otherwise we're going to get left behind. And so if you just start looking at like any of the messaging that's coming from these CEOs and the way that they talk about this stuff, there is this like thread of like, you should fear what happens if you're not an early adopter.
Yeah.
And I made a post the other day talking about this, but like, to me, it's like a continuum of like being an early adopter doesn't necessarily mean much unless you're doing it with high intentionality. Right. And when you talk to people, I can't even tell you how many times I've sat down in meetings where I'm talking to executives and they're like, we want to be the Uber of our industry. We want to be the Netflix of our industry. And, they name like, we want to be the Amazon. They name all of these companies that are synonymous with early adoption in our minds. And like, completely redoing the game in their industry. But when you look at those companies and the way that they were formed and the way that they started, we'll use Netflix as the example. Netflix said, we want to come up with a better way to entertain people inside their homes. They didn't say, we want to be a streaming giant that uses AI and algorithmic suggestions to hook people onto binge watching in their house. Right. That's what they did. And they figured that out, and good for them for getting this really successful business model. But they didn't start with streaming. They started with DVD delivery because they wanted to improve the at-home experience for entertainment. Yeah. And then because they had a purpose for their company and a goal for their company, as technology evolved, they said, how can we apply that technology to what we're trying to accomplish? And how do we move as a company to apply that technology back to this purpose? And if you look at the things that they've done over the years and like the evolutions that they've had, it's not just streaming anymore, right? Now they're saying, how do we improve the entertainment like at home? Well, now they've got podcasting. They make their own movies. They produce their own shows. They do all of these things that weren't a part of their initial business model, because they've been looking at how do we go back to that purpose. And their innovation isn't always technology driven. Sometimes it's expanding to solve other like desires or wants, not necessarily problems if we're talking about binge watching TV. But like they go back to their purpose as a company. And so they got the benefit of being an early adopter because they had high intentionality alongside that. Whereas if you look at like a company like Apple obviously is synonymous with innovation in a lot of people's minds, but they're usually not the first mover.
Right.
They just have high intentionality when they do things. And so they still get the benefit of this like thought process of everyone being like, oh man, they're this really great, innovative company that we should model ourselves after, but they're not the first movers often. And Android users will tell you like that they don't have the latest blah, blah, blah that I've got on my phone, but it's because if they're going to do it, they're going to do it right. And so really the defining characteristic of like how much success you get out of using technology comes from like where you are on that continuum of intentionality. as opposed to, are you the first person to move?
Yeah. Yeah. People forget that, they weren't the ones that invented the smartphone. They didn't invent Netflix. A lot of people don't know. I still talk to people that didn't remember or know that they used to have the mail-in DVDs, which at the time was super cool, but it was a business model disruption. It wasn't about chasing technology. It was about chasing a business model that was broken and trying to fix it. So I want to stop and talk about this framework that Emma just gave, because it's the antidote to everything we've been talking about, which is intentionality beats being first. And this is so easy to overlook. Emma talks about the FOMO cycle all the time and how there's this fear of missing out. And it's such a dangerous place to be. I mean, if you're making decisions based on fear, FOMO, vendor mandates, anything that's not related to business purpose and value, that's a problem. Those projects are almost always going to fail. So intentionality beats being first. And executives tell me all the time, we want to be the Uber of our industry, the Netflix of our industry, the Amazon of our industry. This is what Emma was saying. They name the companies we associate with disruption and early adoption. But if you look closely at what these companies actually did, and Emma talked about this or touched on this, I want to just dive into a little bit more, but look at what these companies actually did. Netflix didn't start by saying we want to be a streaming giant using algorithmic recommendations to drive binge watching. They started by saying we want a better way to entertain people at home, and they started mailing DVDs to people that were used to having to go to the video store to rent DVDs and pay all these late fees for not returning them on time and whatnot. That was the business. That was the problem statement they were trying to address. The technology came later. So this disruptive, cool technology that Netflix has built had a real purpose. Every time the technology evolved, they could ask a simple question. How does this new capability serve what we've already been trying to do? Streaming served it, original content served it, podcast served it, the purpose stayed fixed. The technology changed around it. And keep in mind, Netflix didn't become who they are today by implementing a big, cool ERP system or an off-the-shelf AI tool. They, in many cases, built their own technology that's proprietary, that gives them a competitive advantage, and it's really hard to replicate. So that's something that companies forget about. They think if I go buy SAP or Microsoft or whatever it is, I could be the next Uber or the next to Netflix. Now, let's look at Apple. Apple is synonymous with innovation, but they're usually not the first mover. And this is a really interesting point from Emma. I always forget about this when I think about Apple, because I do think of them as a really innovative company. But then you stop and think, well, actually, they're usually not the first to market in a lot of things. They didn't invent the smartphone. The smartphone was already around. The BlackBerry and the Palm Pilot were big deals when the iPhone came out, and people thought it was kind of weird that Apple was coming out with a phone. In fact, BlackBerry scoffed at the idea. The executives just laughed it off and thought there's no way Apple's going to succeed in this market, because they came out with a phone that doesn't have a keyboard. And if you've read the articles about BlackBerry, if you've watched the documentary, which I think might be on Netflix, I'm not even sure, but there's a documentary. It's really good. It's just called BlackBerry. It's an awesome. It's not a documentary. It's what do you call it? It's based on reality, but it's reenacted. So it's got real actors, but it's telling the story of BlackBerry. But they essentially laugh it off until they realize, oh crap, this iPhone thing is real and it's taken off. And then they try to play catch up and create something without the keyboard and with just a screen. And by then it was too late. Apple had already taken over the market. And now, of course, you've got Samsung and a bunch of other smartphone providers that are dominating the market along with Apple. So Apple didn't invent the smartphone. They're routinely behind on features that Android users have had for years. But what they have is extreme intentionality. When they do something, they do it deliberately. They do it well. So here's the thing I want to reframe based on what Emma was just saying. And that is that being an early adopter means almost nothing on its own. What determines whether you get the value out of technology is where you sit on the intentionality continuum, not whether or not you moved first. So if you're feeling FOMO right now, that's the escape hatch. You don't have to win the race to adopt. You have to be clearer than everyone else about what you're adopting. And that's a much better game to play. And it's one you can actually win. And so this also goes, by the way, if you're in a situation where you are being forced or nudged or pressured by your software vendor to upgrade to a new cloud solution because they're going to discontinue support for an old system. If that old system is still working really well and it's serving your needs, you've got to really look objectively at, well, is that the best thing for us? I mean, maybe we could live or continue on with the system for a certain amount of time and redeploy those resources elsewhere, or just reinvest in our current system and get more out of it. Even though it's an older system, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. Now, of course, if you're on an old mainframe or you've been on a system that's been outdated for 30 years, yeah, of course, that's the other extreme that you want to avoid. But if you just finished rolling out a new ERP system 5 years ago and your vendor's already telling you it's time to upgrade to the newer one, you got to stop and ask yourself, what's the point? If there is a point, then do it for sure. I'm not saying don't invest in technology, but just be sure you have a reason for why you're doing it, and that there's real measurable business value behind it. And I think if we do that, that's going to be one of the most important things you can do. If you're advising an executive team or project team and they just don't quite have the budget or the focus on the people side of things that we're talking about here today, what's your advice to them? What do you do?
I don't think you need a big budget. I think you need to just care.
Yeah.
And I talk about this often. Yeah, I talk about this often. Like, you have to have the purpose. I think I've beat that horse. Hopefully he's not dead yet. But you have to have the purpose and the vision. And then you need to communicate that. And then you have to communicate throughout your implementations. And you have to be willing to get feedback from your team and actually listen to it. You have to be willing to share information that maybe feels like bad information with them so that they have knowledge so they can make decisions off of it. And then you have to actually appreciate the work that people are putting in and acknowledge it and do things to celebrate small wins and let your team know that you see the work and the effort that they're putting into making adoption happen, making the solution happen. And those three things sound so simple and so easy. They don't require a big budget, but it requires you to care.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, it doesn't solve all of your people problems. It doesn't make everything go away. If you had a budget, I'd say hire somebody with like an organizational change management background to help you. I would say bring in third stage consulting. But at the very minimum, you just have to care and do these things that we know are like foundational to building and maintaining trust in a company.
And by doing so, you might actually save money. You might find that you don't need as much technology as you thought you did. And that's where all the wasted money goes, is to the technology. So, well, thank you, Em. I really appreciate it. And thank you to the audience for the great questions. Some really good conversation there. Enjoy the intersection of AI and people and change management. I especially appreciate this discussion around the nuance of change management at the top. I'm really enjoying lately talking about this topic with clients and with podcast guests, talking about leadership and what can leaders do differently. And Emma did a nice job framing this in a way that hopefully will give you some good advice. Now, we're going to continue this conversation, but more focused on AI and what's going on with AI. And we're going to shift gears and talk to Natalia, who does product management at Oracle within the Oracle Fusion world. And she is on the front line of developing some of the bleeding edge technologies and the agentic AI solutions that Oracle is engaging in right now. So I'm really excited to have Natalia on the show to really dig in and get a sort of a lay of the land, an update on where the industry is from a vendor perspective. So Natalia, thanks for being here today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much. So I am Natalia Rachelson. I am a Senior Vice President of Product Management for the Fusion Application Suite here at Oracle.
Okay, great. Well, good to have you here. And I'm sure you see the inside and how the sausage is made in terms of these applications and cloud and AI and all the stuff that we're going to get to here today. But, I know that Oracle is a leader, one of the leaders in agentic AI, and every vendor's talking about it, but you guys are really investing heavily in it. How should business leaders separate the hype from the practical opportunities within agentic AI?
Well, there is so much on the market right now and so much buzz, and AI is everywhere and everybody's talking about AI, but not all AI is made the same. What we're seeing happening in the market in general, we have this amazing new technology, but we're applying it to old business processes and sort of old systems. We're trying to bake it in, and because we're baking it in, it's only providing incremental value to our customers. Now, in Oracle's case, our approach is different. We are really rethinking how these next-gen systems should be designed to deliver value that we were never able to deliver to customers previously. And how can we tackle problems that we couldn't automate previously, or it was too complex, too expensive to tackle. So customers just didn't even go that direction in the past.
Yeah.
So we really see this evolving, and unless you're able to think of new ways in how new systems powered by AI can work. All of this incremental co-pilots, assistants, they're helpful, but they're not really moving the needle. So I would encourage customers to look at solutions where AI can operate within within the system where work happens, where live transactional data resides, where all the security rules reside, where access controls reside, policies, hierarchies, where there is all this context that you can possibly want to be able to make a decision, where AI can make a decision on behalf of the humans, and AI can actually complete work, not just a task that you can do with an AI agent, but a full, it can work against a business objective and deliver a real business outcome.
Interesting.
So that is where the future is, and that's where things are going to get a lot more interesting from the state that we're at today.
Yeah. Well,
I could even give you, self-driving example, right? So the self-driving capabilities we've been sort of exposed to them for a long time, but Teslas, and there's been sort of an autonomy dial. How much autonomy do you want to give to your self-driving cars? And now we have Waymos, and the Waymos are able to operate just like a human would. They have all the sensors, the cameras. They can instantaneously make a decision, right? What if somebody is crossing the street, like out of the blue? What if a person on the bike is approaching and they're not seeing the Waymo? Waymo has to react super quickly. So think of business systems and AI operating within those systems. AI needs to have a lot of information and access to rules and policies and controls and live data in order to be able to operate like a Waymo within an enterprise business environment.
If you had to estimate, this may not be a fair question because I doubt you have an exact number, but if you had to estimate the percentage of companies out there that you're working with that are actually ready to take full advantage of what you just described and having the data and the foundation in place to support AI, what would you say it is roughly?
So I think our customers are in a very advantageous position. Many of our customers run multiple parts of their business on Fusion. So they run finance and HR, or maybe finance and supply chain or procurement, or a sales, service, and marketing. So many of them already have data in one place and data in the system of record. It's not data. We certainly want data from data lakes to add the richness of context, but you need that live transactional data that's defined in a single way for AI to be able to operate properly. So at this point in time, about half of our customers have done something with AI. Many have rolled out Gen AI, just kind of earlier Gen AI use cases for like simple authoring of goals or performance reviews or item descriptions. We also have started to see customers adopt AI agents. We've got different types of AI agents. We have RAG agents. We have sort of agent teams. We have workflow agents. So customers have been rolling them out where they are advising a benefits policy advisor or a procurement policy advisor. That's gotten rolled out pretty widely. We have customers who have implemented AI agents and workflow agents for service scenarios where AI is crunching through service requests and are the first line of defense sort of in responding to customers. We have seen huge improvements in resolution rates and just the speed with which SRs get attended to and get closed. And certainly for more complex questions, we have talented service people, and our customers have talented service staff to help customers through a more complex scenario. So all of this is underway. All of this is happening. We just released back in March our first set of agentic applications. 22 agentic apps across the Fusion suite. So we've got agentic apps available for finance, for HR, for procurement, for supply chain, for manufacturing, sales, service, and marketing. Every area has a few agentic apps, and these agentic apps are really fundamentally different. These are the apps that where we've got teams of agents, each with its own specialty, working together against the business objective. So I can tell an app, hey, I want to reduce my days sales outstanding by 3%. I want to improve my renewal rates by 10%. I want to improve my service inquiry resolution time by 25%. So the employees need to know the business very, very well to give the app the right business objective. And then the app does all the reasoning and thinking using all the rich context and all the data within the policies, within the security, within access control. And the app basically comes up with a conclusion. It shows you a plan for how to achieve it. And if you want to insert human in the loop, then a human makes the final judgment call on whether a given plan should be implemented. But the app can see the whole thing through and accomplish a business objective and deliver an outcome. So it's a very different way to engage with software and to think kind of the contract between humans and software. It's really changing in front of our eyes, and we think that many roles will get redefined in this process.
Gotcha. Yeah. It seems like a lot of jobs are absolutely changing as a result of AI, and IT modernization in general is having a big impact on people's jobs. What are organizations struggling to move, or let me rephrase it, of the companies that are struggling to move from AI experimentation or pilots into enterprise-wide adoption? What are the challenges that they're facing, moving away from pilot mode into enterprise scale of AI solutions? What are the biggest challenges?
Yeah. So I think this is back to some of what we talked about in the beginning, that not all AI is created equal. Mm-hmm. Some AI doesn't operate in the system of record. It's sort of, a lot of it is add-on, so like kind of a side. I mean, it's even called Copilot. It is somewhere next to you. It is not inside the system. So you see, again, it's incremental benefit. And when you see incremental benefit, you start to think whether the cost is worth it. You also see a lot of our competition is charging for everything and anything AI related. Oracle is unique in a sense where we own the entire stack, and the world's largest LLMs train and inference on our cloud infrastructure. As a result, we're able to offer a lot of what we call sort of embedded AI, as well as more advanced AI at no additional cost to customers, right? It's included in their existing subscription. Where things where we get into the additional sort of dollars is where customers are using frontier models, much more sophisticated models with deeper reasoning. For example, for agentic applications, you need frontier models in order to be able to execute the very complex scenarios that we talked about. That's when you see some customers will incur additional costs. But I think because you can start with low-hanging fruit, with Oracle Fusion without incurring any additional costs, that's how you get comfortable. You basically get incremental benefit, but you get it at no additional cost. You understand how AI works. You build what I call the organizational AI muscle, and then you can progress from there. And as you see AI doing the work for you, really executing the work, then you're paying for the outcomes, basically.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting what you're saying about the entire tech stack being owned by Oracle and how that enables better, learning models or better AI training models.
Yeah.
So Super
I
interesting.
mean, we offer ChatGPT OSS, the open weights model, at no additional cost. We just made the announcement. I don't know if you saw this morning, we announced that we are welcoming Gemini models into the Fusion environment. Customers will now have direct access to a number of models. Again, there's lower end models, higher end models, and a lot will be included. And if you want more advanced capabilities, those come with additional costs.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's good news, I'm sure, for a lot of people.
The costs are tied to outcomes. So the more you get out of the system, you do have to pay a bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. So what, in addition to you were talking about how Oracle is the, one of the few ERP vendors or AI providers that owns the entire tech stack, which is really interesting. But are there other things or other mistakes or considerations that customers should be thinking about as it relates to incorporating AI into their ERP or overall digital transformation initiatives?
So user training is a big one. So getting user buy-in and then working with the user community. Some of it does not require extensive training at all, but it's just their experience changes and giving them heads up about the change in the experience. Once people start to get AI assistance, they love it because you no longer have to write the long emails. You can let AI do it. You no longer have to write the tedious item descriptions. AI can help you do that, right? You can get AI assistance through the performance review process. Not everybody loves to talk about themselves and write the 1,000 things that are required as part of the performance review. So it's getting your hands on the AI experience. So once you see it in action, especially with Fusion, people start to appreciate what they get.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say, what we've heard from customers, is the whole compliance aspect and security. Customers have formed governance boards around AI, and the governance board usually reviews all the different software companies using and various AI capabilities. So our advice is to get Fusion approved as a whole, all the capabilities built within Fusion, versus going feature by feature, because you're going to be falling more and more behind going through that compliance process that way.
Right.
So just get a blanket Fusion approval, and then you can move a lot faster. So that's, the compliance review boards is where things get bogged down.
Yeah. Interesting. Now, looking ahead, how do you see AI changing the role of ERP systems and enterprise applications over the next several years?
Well, so we are moving from what we call systems of record to ERP becoming a systems of outcomes and really a system of work where AI completes work on behalf of its users. The other thing I will say is, in case of Fusion used to be a suite, a full suite of applications on a single data model with security and all sorts of things. We have now become an AI native development platform. With the launch of AI Agent Studio and all the additional capabilities we've been adding, Agent Builder, Agentic App Builder, we've added capabilities. We now serve as business users that can use no-code environment to create agents or agentic apps, to professionals who work in Codex or Claude Code or VS Code. We're offering them an option to stay where they're at, use the tools they're comfortable with, but we're giving them a Fusion plugin so you can stay in Codex or Claude Code, but using that Fusion plugin, you can develop a Fusion agentic app, solve a complex enterprise problem, and deploy the app straight into Fusion from one of these external development environments. So it's a very exciting, it's a super exciting time in our industry. It's awesome to be an AI builder. It is awesome to be an AI user. on the business side of things, and the speed of change and just the sheer velocity of innovation that I see happening is completely unprecedented. I've been in this industry for a while and I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I totally share that same sentiments, but it's the most fun I've had in this industry, just watching all the changes and all the options that customers have. And speaking of that, I'm sure a lot of customers listening to this, or potential customers listening to this interview, are thinking to themselves, okay, Natalia, that all sounds great. I'm intrigued by it, but I don't know how to get started. I don't know where to go from here. What advice would you give to organizations or leaders that are just beginning their journey to AI, digital transformation in here in 2026?
So back to what we just talked about, the speed of change is unprecedented. And if you don't get on the bus or the train, it's leaving the station, you're gonna get behind. So our advice is get started with capabilities that are included and embedded. Get comfortable with those capabilities first. Get your org to understand how AI works, what the experience is like, and then just crank up the level of complexity and sophistication of where you want to apply AI. Find the other aspect is find things that bug you down. Find things where you can, it's been a known problem for a while, but you can, it's an amazing use case for AI. Like look at the full process, pick a process, pick your pain points, and start with AI there. Either use agentic apps or agents that are already pre-built, delivered by Oracle. You can use agents or agentic apps developed by our partners through our AI agent marketplace, or build your own. We very much encourage innovation. We are giving you the most powerful tools. Same tools we use internally, we've now made available to our customer and partner community. You can now solve any business problem that you want. And I just don't wait. I think the biggest point is do not wait, get started, get going. Because it's going so fast, catching up is really hard. And I will say, not just for customers, even within Oracle itself, we have to bring all of our employees up to speed and on board and get everybody to that same level playing field.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
It's an industry challenge. Keeping up with AI, with the pace of AI development.
And it'll probably just get harder and harder over time. Things are going to continue going fast, if not faster. And I think starting small is the good news with AI is it's not like ERP or traditional ERP where you almost have to bite off the entire thing. With AI, you can take bits and pieces. You can look at the high value areas first, get your feet wet, get comfortable, build some early wins, and then you can go.
Exactly. The beauty is you are not re-implementing anything. You are not starting from scratch. You don't need to rethink everything at once. You pick a business process. You are still running Fusion. You are just using new capabilities, very new capabilities within Fusion.
Right.
And to see how powerful they are and what you can accomplish.
All right. Well, thank you, Natalia. That's super helpful. And I'm actually going to give you a QR code right here. Check the QR code on the screen here. That's going to give you a resource that you can get from Oracle that'll give you some guidance on your agentic AI strategy. So be sure to check it out. There's a QR code on the screen in front of you, or if you're listening to this podcast without video, go to the show notes below and be sure to click on it because there's some great resources that you can get from the Oracle website that'll teach you a little bit more about AI and what to be thinking about as it relates to that. So be sure to check that out. So I want to thank Natalia and Emma for being here today on today's show. Really appreciate them both joining us. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday at transformationgroundcontrol.com. And we look forward to seeing you next week. So my name is Eric Kimberling, Third Stage Consulting. Thanks for being here. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Take care.